I just had the great privilege of spending 3 days with Dr. Mike Robinson at his Daguerreotype studio in Toronto. Mike is one of the foremost experts in the daguerreotype process. He's highly respected in the field, and he's an incredible artist in his own right. We spent the time exploring the 19th century mercurial daguerreotype process. We looked at countless examples of really incredible 19th century plates, and we explored the process using modernized daguerreotype technologies that Mike has invented and builds himself. He's building the same tools for my daguerreotype studio, which I'm really excited about. So this is a short video showing an overview of the mercurial daguerreotype process and a master at work. I'll be briefly describing the steps in the video along the way, and at the end of it, you'll get to see two really incredible daguerreotype portraits that Mike made of me. Mike was also kind enough to sit down for a short form interview where we discussed what brought him to photography and daguerreotypy, what he loves about the process and how he thinks about it, and what's driven him over the years to go so far with it. That interview's at the end of the video, and I really hope you enjoy it. I think it offers a really wonderful insight into the mind of a really incredible artist and a highly accomplished academic, and an all-around great guy who's done and is continuing to do some really amazing things. So I hope you enjoy the video. I hope it piques a little bit of interest in you around the daguerreotype process as well as 19th century photographic processes. So if this is the kind of thing that interests you, I hope you'll subscribe and come back for more as I make more videos. Special thanks to Dr. Mike Robinson for spending this time with me, and I hope you enjoy. The daguerreotype process requires a silver plate with a pristine mirror finish. The plate first goes through a series of surfacing steps and then moves on through an exhaustive series of polishing steps. Here you see Mike polishing the plate using a specially made buff with a light application of red iron oxide or rouge, which will then be followed by a buff with a light application of lamp black. The repeated strokes on the surface of the plate are what produce the mirror finish required for the process. After polishing, the plate is sensitized in a multi-step sensitization process. First, it's sensitized over iodine, which reacts with the pure silver on the surface of the plate to produce light-sensitive silver iodide. Correct sensitivity in this step is judged by the degree of color change on the surface of the plate. The plate is then further sensitized over bromine, which reacts to produce silver bromide, and that acts as an accelerator in the process, making the exposures shorter than they otherwise would be with pure iodine. The plate is then resensitized over the iodine once more. This step usually has to be done in the dark, but Mike has designed a special box that allows it to be done with the plate in the plate holder. Next comes the actual step of making the exposure. The model is positioned sitting or standing using a special head brace to prevent them from moving during the exposure. Light modifiers are moved around the studio to control light falling on the model, and then the photographer goes under a dark cloth behind the view camera to focus the camera. After that, the plate holder is placed into the back of the camera and the exposure is made. In this case, the exposure was about 22 seconds. After the exposure, the plate has to be exposed to the fumes of mercury. In this case, we use a special box invented by Mike that allows this to be done in the film holder in daylight. Chemistry is then mixed up for the fixing and the gilding steps. The plate is first fixed in a solution of sodium thiosulfate. This stops any further reaction to light. All of this is done in room light because the plate isn't particularly sensitive and it won't be ruined by incandescent bulbs. After fixing, the plate is washed and then it's placed on a specially made gilding stand. The plate is then flooded with distilled water to produce a meniscus on the surface of the plate. After that, it's further flooded with a gold chloride solution for gilding. The plate is then heated with an alcohol lamp. The heat from the alcohol lamp accelerates a chemical reaction in the gilding solution that deposits a thin layer of pure gold across the surface of the plate, which improves image tone, contrast, and permanence. Once gilding's complete, the plate is washed in distilled water and then force dried using a hair dryer. The hair dryer moves the distilled water off the plate fast enough so that it doesn't leave water deposits on the surface. And what you end up with is an absolutely gorgeous daguerreotype. Here are two examples of portraits that Mike made of me in the studio. The plates are then very carefully packaged in special casings that seal out air and help to prevent the silver of the plate from tarnishing over time. Sorry for my fingerprints there, but you see an example of a beautifully cased daguerreotype.
Well, for me, it was a long process to get to the daguerreotype. When I was studying photography at Ryerson University, I was working with the 8 by 10 inch camera, large format, shooting contact prints, developing my negatives in really exotic developers. I was really enamored by the best in quality that you could get from the photographic medium. And in my second year of school, I went to the George Eastman House Museum, and I saw an exhibition of Atget photographs, a French photographer, and he was working with a large format, 8 by 10. He was making printed out prints from long scale negatives, and I was seeing qualities and tones in these 100-year-old photographs that I was not seeing with modern materials. And so in my second and third year, I started to look into the albumen printing process. And there were a few sources. There was a book called The Albumen and Salted Paper Book by James Riley, and you know, he had sort of distilled the 19th century knowledge into a concise little modern resource. And so I started making albumen prints. And they were making reasonably good albumen prints, but I was using modern film. And I needed to suddenly realize that if I really wanted the full tonal range capable of the albumen printing medium, I needed to work with a longer scale negative. And so I turned to find out more about the wet collodion process, which brought me to the George Eastman House Historic Process Workshops, where I met the Ostermans, who were teaching a version of collodion. And I was hired to teach the albumen printing workshop there. And my friend Ken Nelson was a contemporary daguerreotypist, and he was teaching the daguerreotype process. And in my search for quality, once you've seen a daguerreotype, there's really nothing else to compare. So I just, in my search for the ultimate quality capable in photography, I came to the daguerreotype. Well, I think firstly Ansel Adams, and Ansel Adams was, you know, a fine photographer, but he was also a student of photography and teacher of photography. So he understood his medium, you know, not only from an aesthetic point of view, but from the manipulations point of view, how to extract the ultimate in range and detail out of your negative. And then the print, of course. And so he developed what's known as the zone system, which was a system of process and control and translating light into silver and then back out into the print. So he found this way of controlling his every situation to get exactly what he wanted in his negative. And so he was absolutely a huge influence, and it's the way I approach my own work, is trying to, you know, understand the light and do whatever needs to be taken to get the end result in your medium. The other mentor, of course, was Edward Weston. Now, Edward Weston did not do the zone system, but he developed 18,000 negatives, and so when you get that kind of experience. Anyway, he also worked with the large format, and his prints are exquisite. So those two, I say, are my two most influential 20th century photographers. Now, I have several daguerreotype mentors as well. South of Van Haas are at the top of the list for portraiture. Baron Gros, the French chargé d'affaires in Paris, is one of the finest practitioners that ever lived in, you know, the daguerreotype. And of course, Frederick von Martens, who made these astonishing panoramic views of Paris in the mid-1840s. Well, you know, the daguerreotype process is unique, not only as a process, but it's unique in every individual's hands. There's no two daguerreotypists that make daguerreotypes the same way. It's not that way now, and it wasn't that way in the 1850s. You can almost tell the hand of the maker by the handcraftedness, by the process is so demanding of human agency that it can't help but show the hand of the maker in the result. And my particular process is I have always been striving to work sympathetic with 19th century practice. I'm not trying to replicate it verbatim, but I use the materials and methods as they were available in the 1850s, in particularly the plate and the methodologies of preparation of the plate. And I think that has really helped me in understanding not only the 19th century plates I see, but also helped me achieve a level of craft that is equivalent to the finest of the 19th century. So that's my approach. Is first, materials and methods are absolutely critical. The second part of the approach is once you are about to take a photograph, you really need to learn how each situation is resolved in the daguerreotype. And each situation is a unique challenge, whether it be different complexions from different sitters, or landscape views with different colors in the structures, green. You have to remember that the daguerreotype is not equally sensitive to the entire spectrum. And so if you want to record information in the less actinic regions of the spectrum, there are some things you need to do to try to control that. And really that's how I approach every shooting situation, whether it be a portrait or a still life or a landscape view. I will study the light, interpret the color of the light, and then prepare my plates and do my exposures accordingly.